let's get into our first talking point and start the show proper because it's just gone 8 o'clock. And this week, so calls for heading to be banned. The Professional Footballers Association is calling for restrictions on heading in training following concerns over the number of former players suffering from dementia. The PFA says a game-wide strategy is urgently needed for dealing with dementia and neurodegenerative diseases in football. I'm surprised I was able to say that word. It has asked for clubs in both league and football association to create a coordinated strategy to measure, monitor and adapt training, identifying protections that can be made that can make a difference to the long-term health of players. This is after, well, a number of 66 players have suffered from dementia. And I was just reading an article about Big Jack Charlton. Apparently, he didn't even remember he won the World Cup towards the end of his life, which is incredibly sad because he was so beloved by a lot of people. And I can remember my grandfather telling me about him and saying, he's the only Englishman I ever liked because of the Ireland manager's job. But, Bobby Charlton's been diagnosed with it now, and we've seen Nobby Stiles pass away recently. Totally unrelated. We saw Ray Clements as well pass away, but that was totally unrelated to this. But absolute footballing legend Ray Clements was sad, and obviously we respect to the family and everything, and we'll think about them. But it just seems like an epidemic, an absolute epidemic. And even you've got Premier League managers now coming out, and even David Moyes midweek saying, he doesn't want to. He used to head the ball in training quite a lot, and he doesn't. A lot of managers, I think, Moyes and Ralph Hasenhüttl, the Southampton manager, were saying, we don't want heading to go out the game, but it needs to be, the balls need to be softer or something. And David Moyes actually called on Nike and Adidas to make the ball softer for contact with the head. Now, at a youth level, you're not allowed to head the ball anymore. And you know what? I'd rather them just not head the ball, to be perfectly honest. Because even the Southampton boss was saying, you get these kids in, they can't head the ball. They're not very good because they haven't learnt to do it. So if they're not good at it and they can't do it, why implement it as a rule? Why don't you just have the head be considered like the hand, and if it comes off the head, foul? Why not?
So they're going to have to change the way football's played altogether. Because if you're going to do that, change the rules, change the way that football's trained. If you're going to change the balls as well, then the whole layout of football as a sport is going to change altogether. Or because you want to take heading out of it, because it's always been a part of it, and unless they change everything, it will always be a part of it. You're never going to. Unless they just ban it altogether, you're never going to completely get rid of it.
For me, yeah, banning would be like I'm never one to go, we need to ban this, we need to ban that. But when it comes to heading, until, and I don't want to sound like somebody that's about to vacate a certain premises, but we need to stop it until we can figure out what the hell's going on.
Because I think it's like if they stop football altogether. Like you see the amount of times that balls are headed in a football match. Everyone's going to have to play the same way. They won't be able to actually hit a ball in the air because then most players use their head to control it, or head in direction to play it, to play it onto another player. Every match is going to look the same, which is everything on the ground. So it's gonna the teams that don't have the resources to buy all the best players who are better on the ball, playing on the floor, rather than these teams. I'm not going to say, it's something wrong, but teams like Burnley and
long ball
teams who play long ball, a big 6 foot, 3-4 plus centre forward, number 9, and he'll try and bring others play, and he play it up to him to hold the ball up. They won't be able to do that now. Every team will have to have quick, skillful players on the ball because no one's allowed to touch it with the head. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying it's not just a case of, oh, we'll just, you know, stop players from heading in it, and then nothing else will change. It'll change everything about football.
I
Because then
can
you won't have
see.
players challenge. You
Yeah,
you
go
won't have
on.
defenders. When when he hits up, you won't have opposition defenders going up and challenging it with a forward player to head the ball backwards. You won't be able to head from corners. Set pieces will all be about, unless you're going directly for goal, you'll have to play it short on the floor. You won't be able to
I
like
mean,
put a
that's the
cross
way the
into the
game is
box.
going anyway. To be fair, I would argue
Yeah, but
that's the way it's going anyway. And as Brian Clough wants to play it
but
on the
you're
green
moving the
grass, not in the
choice.
sky.
You're moving the choice of doing it. Like teams now have their own strategies about how to do set pieces, but the majority of set pieces are still, if they're a bit further away from doing it, they'll try and put a ball into the box and have a big centre half or a forward player head it for a goal. So they're going to take away the choice of being able to of teams being able to do that. It's going to be like, right, you can only do it this way, and trust me, look, I would, if it proves that it would significantly reduce the chances of the former players getting to mention, then absolutely, I won't do anything. If it was up to me, I'd do everything I can to reduce that. I think it's terrible if it is happening, if that is the main cause.
Mm.
But I'm just saying, I'm trying to play devil's advocate in a way that I want people making decisions need to have a look at the big picture, because it's not just going to be taking heading out of it. Nothing else is going to change. It's going to change the landscape of football altogether as a sport.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And I know it'll fundamentally change the way that the game is played. But I'm still firmly that we need to pick health over. I mean, quite
yeah,
frankly,
absolutely.
when it comes to that argument, we're definitely not picking health over entertainment. We're picking entertainment over health, which is why that Mo Salah's now got COVID, and why we're playing
Yeah,
so many bloody fixtures.
yeah,
Footballers are just a piece of meat, so it would be nice for the PFA or the FA or the Premier League or the EFL to say, you know what, actually you're not a piece of meat.
yeah.
There
We care about your
is,
well-being.
yeah, we do care about your well-being. It's not just
Yeah,
you get to the age of, you get into your 30s, you're tossed to the side. Um,
yeah,
you know, I think this is an era where I think recently, and I think COVID has proven that players are just meat. They're just cogs in the wheel,
yeah,
and I just fear that this is just going to get buried and buried and buried. And for years, the NFL had a problem. The American Football League, the NFL, had a massive problem with concussion. Obviously, they do full body
yeah.
tackles and everything like that, but they had a massive problem with concussions, and they just buried it for years and years. And I hope the Premier League doesn't do that. What I
Don't do
will
that.
say though is that the older players used to play with these thick leather balls that used to get, especially if it was raining, they used to say it was like hitting a brick.
Soggy. Yeah,
Yeah,
like a brick hitting you. Yeah,
yeah, like hitting a brick. And modern balls are softer, are made of a more compact material.
I
So
mean, well, that's the thing is with for one thing I did see is that the balls that they used back then, leather ones, would get heavier but would travel slower. Ones now will just, no matter what conditions, will just fly at you at the same speed.
yeah,
Um, I think you are right in what you're saying. And I said I do agree that we need to. I think what it is that because footballers and elite sports people are paid, especially in football, large sums of money to do what they do. It's kind of almost like, well, they'll put it, when you say they treat it like meat, you're right. But I think almost the football authorities think, well, they're getting paid so much by their clubs, they won't really
yeah.
care what we do, So yeah, we'll treat them like this, but they won't mind because they're getting paid lots of money, so they'll do it anyway.
Mm.
Um, I do get where you come from, and I think it would be nice to go to them and say, you know what, we we still think, although you are paid large amounts of money, we still care about you as people, because we do realize that you are still human, human
Yeah.
beings. Um, I'm just wondering, like, obviously, I'm not an expert on football, so I don't know what they can do in terms of legislation or new rules that could stop heading altogether. Um, the thing is, with the thing about the academies not being able to head the ball now, is that you're going to get to a point, even if you don't change anything now, where players will just stop heading altogether because they would have been raised from the youth levels not to head, so they just
Yeah,
stop
that
anyway.
is what the Southampton manager was on about. That was Ralph Hasenhüttl. He was talking about the younger players don't have the ability, they don't learn the techniques and the skills
Yeah, yeah,
and things like that. So really, if it's being killed out of the game at a younger level,
yeah,
then I don't
exactly. Then
think it would be
eventually
a
it would just
massive issue banning it
yeah, it
in
would just
10
disappear
years.
anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
um,
all those
yeah,
kids in the
I
academies now
agree.
will just the footballs will just they'll just do everything they can not to head the ball because they don't know how to do it properly. So it'll just disappear naturally anyway. I'm not saying that they can't do, obviously they can do stuff now for
Mm.
the senior players playing now, so that when they eventually retire and however old they are, 10, 15 years, whatever, they're protected for their later lives. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a bit of a complicated one because obviously we're not the rule makers, but I
no,
do
we're just
agree that
speculating. We're the worst
yeah,
kind of people. We're just speculating.
that's what I mean. We're just people from an outside opinion of fans of certain clubs, fans of football in general, who you know I still think these football players are still human beings. Men and women should be protected. They should be protected.
Absolutely, and what we see maybe
Especially
no,
even now with goalkeepers. I seen what was it Rob Green, was it, on Sky Sports this week, was talking about it, and he was saying about goalkeepers. Um, now now because they play they're more, it's more just about saving ball, with the hands. It's about being able to play with the heads, the feet,
yeah,
and you see them running out now, especially the sweeper keepers running out and heading the ball a lot
yeah, I've
more,
seen
and
that quite a bit. Yeah, they just go
I've seen
doink.
it myself.
Yeah,
Yeah, and running out and heading it. That obviously has an impact on things because, I mean, obviously they don't do it as much, but still,
mm.
if keepers are being groomed more and more to be able to do that, then that's going to impact them as well in later years.
Yeah, I
So,
see. Yeah, I know where you're coming from, and obviously, yeah, I agree. But what about wearing like rugby caps or something like that? I don't know whether that would do any. Like
yeah,
Petr Cech had to wear one after a horrific injury against Reading. He had to wear
yeah,
a rugby, and
yeah,
I've seen more goalkeepers start wearing them.
yeah,
More to protect their head, just in scruffles and stuff like that. But I
yeah,
don't.
yeah.
What if that reduced the injuries? If wearing one of those, so that would be something worth testing. And then what if they just made it mandatory for professional
Yeah.
players to wear uh, rugby caps?
Every
Um,
player skull caps.
yeah, yeah, to have skull caps, yeah, just so they can head the ball if they wanted to, because it's not massively invasive. You are just wearing it over your head. It's not impacting on your
Yeah,
vision. It might impact on your hearing where it's covering your ears, but
yeah.
other than that,
But it's, I mean, yeah, I mean, the thing is, they'd still head the ball, and it would still eventually have an impact on them, wouldn't it?
I mean, I know it's not that thick, but
Yeah. I
I
mean,
guess
I
so.
can see where you come from in terms of just overall head injuries.
Yeah.
Players' heads hit, when you headbutt each other by accident, or
Mm.
keepers themselves. I get that. It would stop injuries, but it wouldn't stop them
It
from heading the
wouldn't.
ball
It wouldn't stop
altogether.
them from. Yeah. Yeah. According to this article from the Daily Fail, um, heading a football just 20 times may lead to reduced brain function, and new study claims following the increasing concerns about footballers at a higher risk of
I mean,
dementia. So
to be fair, right, and this
go
is
on.
just me. I may have been a pansy back in school, right? But I remember like playing football in school, um, and when the ball comes to me, and I remember heading it. I tell you what, when it comes down from a certain height, it hurts,
Yeah.
right? But these players doing it, these players, people they'll all be hitting like 100 feet in the air, and it'll come down, and then they'll stand there and just go thunk, and that force coming down your head, that comes down enough
Yeah.
times, like that causes like not even. I'm not saying like damages the skull and stuff and the brain, but it would definitely cause stress if done enough times. Like I can imagine it would have some impact if they've done it enough. Like I can imagine probably centre halves and strikers are probably the worst off because they're the one
Mm.
heading it out of everyone. I would say probably like a midfielder or an attacking midfielder or a winger probably wouldn't head it that much. because it's not part of their role. But I can definitely imagine if done enough times.
Yeah,
I can, you know what? I can probably even imagine players have, if they do it enough times during a match, coming out of the match and having migraines just from the pressure put on their skull over a sustained period. I can
that'd
imagine
be
it.
that'd be interesting to, from a scientific point of view. That'd be quite interesting to monitor, I suppose, the whether or not they footballers, particularly forward players, have migraines more than. Well, no, defenders still had the ball as well because
Yeah,
yeah.
defenders and
So
strikers. That's what I thought.
it'd
Defenders and
be
strikers.
it'd be interesting to see, and yeah. So apparently, the vast majority of the participants in the study who headed the ball, 80% showed potential signs of concussion, the temporary brain injury. So, this conversation is going to be dissected by more. I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for Callum. More clever people than myself. But yeah, this was just a research study done by Liverpool Hope University, and what they found were let's just say children under the age of 12 are already banned from
If
heading
I
the
can just
ball.
say, this is just
Yeah,
something I
go
was
on.
curious about. What were the ages of the people that they tested, like their sort of test group
I
for
think
phone
their
footballers?
test group are just a varying different age of what you would be from the early years to the later years of a footballing career. Although what
Okay.
that means, I have no idea. So, here we go. So instead, forget what I just said because it was all bull. Researchers recruited 30 recreational male footballers aged between 18 and 21 who play once a week. That is your answer to that.
And they play once a week, and studies show that results where they show decreased brain function.
Yeah,
Who's that compared to?
20%.
Is
What
that
was it?
compared to the average for 18 to 21-year-olds?
I guess. Hang on, let's just read on
It must
because
have like figures like, it's like 15-20% decreased brain function if they can, you know, use numbers to calculate the brain waves to show actual, numbers to show this is how much it's decreased by compared to an average 18-21-year-old who
yeah,
doesn't
that.
play once a
So
week.
what they were looking at was what. So they tested them before doing this, and then they tested them after, and then just
Right.
observed the reduced brain function from 80% potentially suffering from concussions because around. So they monitored an average eye speed decrease of around 10%. So
Right.
after
10%.
heading the football,
Right.
both soft and hard ball groups on average compared to the control group who didn't head a ball. So they had a control group that didn't head a ball. They had ones that were heading a softer ball, and then ones that were using a standard FIFA approved
Yeah.
football.
So same people tested before they done the heading the ball, and then after they done the ball. Right. Okay.
They also had memory tests as well,
Yeah. What
and
short-term memory loss? Something.
yeah, and they asked them to recall a particular numbers in a particular sequence, and they said
Yeah.
it tailed off by 20% in the group heading the harder ball compared to those heading the soft ball. So those heading the harder ball saw a drop by 20% of correctness and getting the correct answers. And yeah, so they've come to the conclusion that heading just 20 headers suggests the cognitive damage could be even worse than a typical time frame of a professional career. So if you just did it 20 times, this could be
I mean,
in a row,
most
I
players
guess.
now, most football players, and from national leagues, all the sort of leagues in the pyramid, most players in the main positions, centre half and forward, they more than 20 times a match.
Oh yeah.
And that's more you do it more than once a week.
Oh, absolutely. And you've got to also
Two,
consider
two,
the
three,
amount of
especially
times they'll be
lately,
doing it in
two,
training.
three times a week.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
especially
yeah,
training every day as well.
Yeah, and you got to think there is a certain type of player that is played up front a lot that is told just get
Yeah,
forward and head the ball, get forward and head the
yeah,
ball, and
yeah. You're there to
Peter
win the
Crouch
headers.
comes to mind for that.
Yeah,
He scored a lot of his goals from headers,
yeah.
and yeah, it's
No,
not great.
I get what you're saying. I mean, it will be fascinating to see the figures that they've done for the tests.
Mm,
Um, what I think, just some of the funny. You're going to see remember those flyaways that you play with in school.
mm,
The well, they made them rubberware, the or plastic. I think it was plastic, wasn't it? But they were always fun to play with because you hit it and you don't know where it's going to go. I can't remember what the actual name for them was called. We used to call them flyaways because they used to fly away all the time. Um, you end up playing with them, aren't you? Because or it depends what Nike or Adidas, whoever makes the balls, are going to do with it. What materials they can make it out of. That would be
yeah,
softer.
that's going to be the tough because it's got to be durable, of course, and
Actually, it's got to be
you
durable. It's got to
can't
be able to be. You got to be able to. Because the thing is, passing is and kicking a ball, it's got to go where you want to go. So you got to have
absolutely, yeah.
material that's not going to spin out of control as soon as you hit it.
Mm. Yeah,
So it's
I
got to
mean,
be durable, but it's got to be soft.
this is a conversation that's
What
going
are
to
you
go
going to
on.
do? Carbon fiber.
Jesus Christ.
Is he like Kevlar with these balls?
Yeah. Jeez. I mean, this is a conversation that's going to go on for a long time, and the FA are investigating. They're looking at it at a strategy, and they're working now, the PFA, towards investigating it on a deeper level. And let's hope that that we get the answers that we need, protect the players, because they aren't just meat. They are playing for our entertainment, for our love of the game, for their love of the game, but they're not just a piece of meat, as it has been
Well,
suggested for the
let's
amount of
understand as
games that have
well.
been
Like,
played.
of course, the priority is care for the well-beings, but do understand as well is that they go into this, and when they get to a high enough level, they know the risk. As long as they know the risk of what they're doing, it's like there could be a chance that you could injure your brain by doing this. But they are also, especially the top players, paid comfortably large sums of money to do this. Let's just understand that as well. Like, they are not
Yeah.
lumps of meat, and I'm completely on board with the thing of being able to make sure they have their well-being covered, and they are treated with respect in that sense. But also understand as well is that they are paid. If it was a case that there was a salary cap, or if there was a case of there wasn't so much money in the game, where everyone got just a normal fair wage, and it wasn't hundreds of thousands a week, then I'd say, I think there'd be more sympathy from the general public. I think I'm not saying that there
Well,
isn't now,
I
but I'm
would
saying there'd be
say that
more.
the ones that are passing away, like your Big Jacks, your
Yeah,
Nobby Styles, and
yeah,
he's been diagnosed with it, Sir Bobby Charlton. They weren't paid massive amounts of
no,
money,
yeah,
but
I do understand that side as well.
but
Yeah,
no, I understand your point. I just needed to clarify that they were
yeah, yeah.
never paid that much money.
No,
But now you're talking about the modern player,
yeah, modern
which
footballs. That's what I
it'll
meant.
be
Yeah, yeah.
interesting to study that. There's a brilliant Alan Shearer documentary that he did for the Beeb, studying this. So if you can go find it somewhere, it's not on the iPlayer anymore, but it might be on YouTube. Somebody may have put it on there. It would be very good.